computer. Boom. We're recording, and everybody, this is Jim Ruberti. Jim is, as I said, I knew I'd screw this up. Jim is he works for Eversource, and Jim, let's just get right into it. He went to UMass Boston way back many years ago. Now he works for Eversource. And Jim, explain exactly what do you do?
Okay. By the way, thank you guys for having me. Glad you guys are all awake. Hopefully this will be somewhat exciting and you won't fall asleep during this. And Dave, I just want to tell you one thing. I know you were a sports writer for the Globe when I was the captain at UMass soccer across the street, and you never did put an article on me, but that's okay. I won't hold it against
you. I was covering bigger things.
So anyway, yeah, I work for Eversource. What I do now is I am a commercial industrial technology sales representative. So my job is to go out and to try to make people use natural gas to make electricity. So I go to hospitals, hotel, large electric users organizations, and I try to convince them to make their own electricity on site. I know that sounds weird because I work for Eversource and we sell electricity. However, by making electricity on site, you're more efficient and you can save a lot of money, but it's mainly about the efficiency, carbon reduction, green, all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, it's much cheaper to make your own electricity using natural gas than to have the utility make it for you.
What type of dollar figure do some of these projects run?
The smallest project is around $250,000, and I've done a project up to $100 million.
Wow. And a lot of them are colleges, right? I think you said that before.
Yeah, we're working with many of the large colleges. UMass Lowell is not one of them yet, but most of the state schools, a lot of the private schools are now making their own power on site. UMass Amherst has a full power plant out there using combined heat and power, which is what I do, on-site power generation. They're doing their whole campus using on-site power. And the new exciting thing that's coming that you guys need to hear about is renewable natural gas is on its way, using cow manure, pig waste, landfill waste, and injecting it into the natural gas pipelines. So there's renewable natural gas on its way.
Cool. One of the things they're working on now is a capstone, which they basically look to the end of their college career, and they basically do a mock run through where they think, all right, well, here's the industry I want to get into. They research the industry, they research a company, they find a job opening, and then they talk about how they go about getting that job and why it would be a good fit and all this. Your career path I find pretty interesting. You want to tell them a little bit about your career path?
Sure. Believe it or not, I used to run restaurants and bars when I got out of college. And then I got married. And my wife said, you're not going to work in restaurant and bars anymore. So I had to find something to do. And I had a connection that got me a job. You're probably all familiar with FW Web Company, which sells plumbing and heating and air conditioning equipment. And I didn't know a refrigerator from an air conditioning equipment to a copper piece of pipe. And I went in and I worked the counter. I worked my way all the way up. And I was hired out of FW Web Company by the gas company to be a commercial industrial sales rep down here on Cape Cod for, at the time, was Colonial Gas Company. There was also a Colonial Gas Company in Lowell, if you recall, same company. I would convert all commercial industrial customers to natural gas from oil, propane, electric. And that was my primary function, was to get people onto natural gas. I then left the natural gas company to bring on the new product from United Technologies called a fuel cell. Some of you might know what fuel cells are. They are a piece of equipment that takes natural gas in and it cracks it to hydrogen and it makes electricity. That's combined heat and power. So I went to United Technologies for about 4 years, and then I opened a regional office for a Capstone microturbine distributorship for 8 years. So Capstone, unlike your Capstone projects, are actually little jet engines that take natural gas in and make electricity. Well, after about 6 years of that, Eversource called me and said, hey, we'd like you to take over our combined heat and power, on-site power generation selling fuel cells, capstone turbines, jet engines, whatever it takes for customers to put on site to make their own electricity. And that's where I am today. That's a quick sum of 30 years right there.
That's pretty quick. I just want to tell, all the students, if we're going to stop a couple times for questions, if you have any questions, and if you don't, that's cool. But anybody have any questions so far? Nope. Okay. This is a professional communications class, Jim, and I know you've spoken with us before. I will tell them that one way that I know how important Jim is that we went to the Red Sox game and we sat in somebody's booth and people were just kowtowing at Jim like no tomorrow. And they were even nice to me, which is how I knew how important Jim is, because all those people want to work with him. Jim, what's the importance of communication in your business?
Well, I'll tell you, when you're dealing with, it doesn't even matter. Even though I deal with $250,000 jobs and $100 million jobs for customers, large customers, including Fenway Park, by the way, the communication is critical for many reasons. When you're trying to describe what you're doing and who you're dealing with, you need to be spot on. You have to act like whoever you're speaking with doesn't know what you're talking about. But you don't speak down to them and you don't belittle them like they don't know. But I don't know if anybody saw the movie Philadelphia. Does anybody see that movie Philadelphia? And one of the lawyer would always say, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. That's what you need to do with everything. I don't care if you're dealing with somebody from MIT or Harvard. My brother is one of the smartest persons in the world. He runs the biomedical engineering at Northeastern University. He doesn't know how to put a light bulb in. So even if you think the person is the smartest person in the world and you feel like you're inferior to that person, you still need to speak to them in a way that they don't understand what you're talking about. So when I do a combined heat and power 101 presentation, which I do around New England for colleges and universities, I start from scratch. And I start from a box as a box, and I try to keep it as simplistic as possible. Because you don't want to lose people. You want to keep their attention and never, ever assume they know what you're talking about. And that's just communication from you to a customer or a vendor. But you got to keep that communication like that even with your coworkers. Never assume anything, because you don't want to leave anything out, and you want to make sure they understand. And that goes for Dave being a teacher, you guys communicating with your teachers. Let them know where you stand. Nobody's going to look down at you. I think that's the other thing, is they don't look down at you and they don't think you're condescending, and they really listen. You can tell when somebody's listening when somebody's not. So communication's critical.
Just to correct you on one thing, I don't really listen to him, Jim. Nor do I listen to you, as you know. Do you do many written reports?
I just do, there's a thing called, guys may want to look at it too, is salesforce.com. It's a communication, you're just inputting numbers, Dave.
Yeah.
Not many reports. It's what goes in, comes out for the executive summary, quote unquote,
Yep.
to look at. They can look at all the data that you've put in. It's only as good as what you've put in. And that's another thing, by the way, everybody. When you're doing these computer reports, always put the most information you can into it. Do not leave anything out of any report, any Excel spreadsheet. Add columns if you need to, because somebody's always going to ask you that question, an executive, where it's not in the report or not in the spreadsheet. Always happens. So whatever's in your mind that you have, put it down. Make sure it's there. And another good thing too, it always gives you something to look back at to remember what the heck you were talking about.
Good. You ever do online presentations or other presentations?
Yeah, I do online presentations probably 5 to 10 times a week. The key thing with online presentations is to keep the slides short. You probably all know this. I don't ever do a presentation that has more than 12 slides. Depends on the audience sometimes. If I'm dealing with really high-level engineering folks that want to get into the weeds, then I'll put a few more slides. But when doing a presentation, to keep people's attention, you want to do all the talking. You want them to pay attention to you and use the slides as a guide. You don't want to lose their attention. So you do most of the talking and have the slides just as a guide. And never have too much on a slide because you'll lose people.
Because they'll read. Given the choice between listening
They'll
and
read, or sometimes the writing is too small, Dave.
yep.
And once the writing is too small and once they're reading, you have lost them. Here's another tip. A lot of people like to have print off their slide presentations or their presentations and hand them out before their presentation. Don't ever do that. Hand out your presentations and everything afterwards. Because what people will do is they'll be thumbing through your presentations, they'll be 20 pages ahead of you, and they're not listening to you. The communication of listening and face-to-face is so much more important now than it ever was, because computers take the personality, the tone, and the attitude out of everything. So you want people to pay attention to you as the individual, to know your voice, your face, and know who's speaking. It adds a lot of credence to what you're talking about.
Good. And when you do an online presentation, do you do it as a, you flash straight to the slide and then you just talk over the slide for the whole presentation?
Correct. I will put the slides up one at a time. At first, I'll do the introduction. There'll be an introduction screen. There'll be what we're going to go, an agenda slide.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move the slides when I want to move the slides. And I tell everybody at the end that the slide presentation will be available online. And if they have any questions, they can ask later.
Great. And how about other types of online meetings? Do you do a lot of online meetings?
Well, as you know, with this new coronavirus, everybody, this is changing the world. We're doing many Skype meetings now across the country between utility companies. And it's actually worked out very well. And just an aside, just so you know, Dave, I actually, for the first time ever, our poker group got together throughout New England, and we actually did poker online as a group. That'll tell you how things are changing. So this is actually probably good for all your students, what's going on here with Skype and Zoom, because I think a lot of major companies and organizations are going to save a lot of money by doing Skype meetings and Zoom meetings instead of flying people all over the country. Probably hurts the airlines in the future, but this is where we're all heading.
Any questions at this stage for any students, from any students?
Question.
Yep, go ahead.
So now that we have this going on, do you think your company is going to continue doing online meetings rather than like in person for the most part?
Oh, right. Who's this, by the way?
It's me, Jillian. Sorry.
Hi, Jillian. That's all right. Thanks for the question. So yes, 100%. Our company is all about safety. We're OSHA, we're a utility, you know what I mean? We're regulated. So when a regulated utility, they're telling us to not even go to customer sites at this point. Everything is done through Skype. Every meeting we have now, either Zoom or Skype, but mainly Skype is what we've been using. And I see this coming more and more in the future. What's happening is the older executives who've never used computers like this before are now doing it for the first time and loving every minute of it. So I think that's the other hurdle that's going on here, is a lot of people who've never done this before, have been nervous and I don't know how to do it, are now being forced to do it and are really liking it. So I see you guys are going to be on the precipice as you graduate to this be a really common thing that you're saying.
That's interesting. Well, my question dovetails into that answer, which is, I mean, interpersonal relationships are very important in your business, certainly in most businesses. So I guess it's a two-part question. How are interpersonal relationships going to be impacted by Zoom meetings all the time? And how important are interpersonal relationships in business?
It's a great question, Dave. Interpersonal, everybody, doesn't mean texting. It means picking up the phone and calling people so they can hear your voice. They recognize a voice, not just emailing. Emailing and texting does not show a personality. Emailing and texting doesn't show tone. Emailing and texting doesn't get humor, as Dave and I find out every once in a while. Email and texting just does not show sarcasm. I think in the last class we did, Dave, I told you about somebody who sent an email that was supposed to be funny and they got fired over it because it was taken out of context. Context matters. And the only way you can get context is with the tone of a personal either do a Skype one-on-one like this, or you call the person on the phone. Texting and email is not enough for interpersonal, whatever, the skills to communicate with one another. Just remember that. Emails and texts just aren't enough.
And one of the things, the other things you said, and I think I mentioned this in class, I'm sure I didn't give you credit, but you had said it to my class the last time you came in, is people want to know, I mean, what people want to know when they deal with you is he going to be interesting to, or is he going to be easy to deal with? And is he going to do what he says he's going to do? Is he going to be dependable? Those are really the two things that you want to convey through interpersonal, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's building up that trust in the relationship, and you're not going to do it through emails and texts. Emails and texts are mainly for, hey, how are you? Or how about this? Hey, can I call you later? Those are, and then after that, after you get that personal relationship going, then texting and emails are fine, because then you know each other, you get everything. But until then, you need to establish that one-on-one personal face-to-face. If it has to be done by Skype, that's fine, because you're looking at the person's face and you're hearing the tone. Emails and texts are not the way to do it.
Good. What are emails good for?
Emails are good for direct. They should be short and to the point. If you want to attach a slide presentation, or you want to attach documents, if you want to attach proof that you were right in the past, proof that they were right in the past. Emails should be used as a direct line of communication without being verbose. You be verbose as much for them to get the point. But like I said, you have to be careful with tone and sarcasm and how you're reading it. Sometimes it's not the same way the person in the email is reading it. It goes back to that critical personal relationship part.
There were two other things that I've heard you say about emails before. One is that you do it in a designated spot, and you don't do it unless you've got enough time to sit and think about it before you send it. And you also talked about the idea of emailing after a meeting to confirm that everybody's on the same page and everybody understands what their responsibilities are.
Wow, you remember that. I'm proud of you, Dave.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so with these emails are great for follow-up, because you could have a meeting of 7 people, and I think I mentioned this the last time. You could walk out of that room and all 7 people have a different idea of what went on in that meeting. So there should always be somebody, whether it's yourself or somebody, to take notes and do a follow-up meeting at the end to say, this is what was spoken about. This is the net action items, is a big word out there. Here are the action items. Here's who controls those action items. And here's the date when those action items need to be complete. That's a great way to follow up on email conversations. Don't ever assume everybody in the meeting is walking out of there with the ideas you wanted to give them or what you talked about. That's a good way to have an email. And the other thing is to always make sure, if you're sending a derogatory email to a good friend, make sure you are not CCing anybody. Always take a look. Make sure you're sending it to the right person, because there are always similar names out there. We all get used to I put the R in and Radigan comes up first. That's a problem in my life sometimes. Because sometimes what I say to Dave is not what I say to my $100 million customer. So I got to be careful, but always make sure before you hit send, just like a text and everything else, everybody, make sure you read it, because once you hit send, you're never getting it back.
Good. What do you use text for?
I use text mainly for directions sometimes. Are you available to speak now? If it's an emergency, like I can't get you on email, I've tried you emails, I've tried Skype, I've tried to get a hold of you, are you okay? This is all business related, by the way. So obviously it's separate from regular personal text. A text is also a legal document, everybody. So a text can be used against you in a court of law. So when you're texting businesses and vendors and everything, once again, before you hit send, make sure the information is accurate and it's what you really want to say.
Good. Good. Any other communication in your line of work?
It's just, even in the most complex jobs, like I was saying, where there's massive engineering involved, and I'm dealing with architects and engineering, state and city officials is to keep it simple and let the people who want it more than simple come to you and ask for more. The last thing you want to do is bore people. The last thing you want to do is give people information that they never want to hear to begin with. I go back to that executive summary you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The executive summary is great for people who are making decisions because they don't have time to go through all of that stuff. They want to see the executive summary, and if they have a question, they'll talk to somebody else to go find the answer. So try to keep everything like that, high level until you're asked to go to the next level. Try to keep it simple. You'll have everybody's attention and let it flow from there.
Good. Let me see if anyone else has a question before we get to the last one that I have for you. Anybody else have a question for Jim?
So what did you guys do that is, what's your email problem? Who was right? Who was wrong?
Okay, so what happened was a person wrote an email to one of our coworkers, and it was a joke. But he CC'd 4 other people,
Ooh.
including a person from HR. And that's how they lost their job.
Intense.
Yeah, it
Well,
happened.
it was because there was an investigation and everybody who was on that email was brought in. Companies right now don't play around with any of this stuff. I know a lot of times we joke and everything, and you know, it's a different era for you guys than it was for Dave and I. So it's a little, we have to really watch what we say out in the real world. But it's pretty intense at work now. You have to be careful what you say, what you do, who you know, how you talk to people. So that's why I say keep everything on the high level. And then when somebody wants some more information, then you can give them that information. When it comes to interpersonal inside the office place, mainly dealing with your coworkers, you got to be real careful. And if you have a really good relationship with people and you want to get into stuff outside of work, try to find an office where you can speak when nobody's around or go outside and have the conversation. Workplaces are a very sensitive place right now.
Any other questions for Jim before? Jim, any advice?
My advice is you guys can do whatever you want. My advice is I don't care what you're majoring in right now. It doesn't matter. Get that degree, find a passion, go out and make it happen. And I'm a perfect example of it. I ran restaurants, and now I'm designing $100 million on-site power plants without an engineering degree. How fun is that? And you can do whatever you want. And don't think that because you're majoring in something, that's what you're stuck with. Just get the degree, find a passion, and make sure you enjoy what you do.
Good. Let me just throw it out to see if they got one more question. Let's see who stuck around for the class. Oh, everybody! Look at that. Anybody else got any questions for Jim about communication or about business or about anything? We're all good. Jim, they got nothing for you. I'll give you a call after class.
Well, that's good. That must be. Hopefully that went well. Well, thanks everybody for attending.
Thanks, Jim.
And,
Thank you.
and Dave's got a lot of knowledge. Listen to him. I know he doesn't look like he's smart, but believe me, he's a very smart guy.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so before we wrap up, I just want to check for anybody who tuned in late. Did anybody have any questions about the capstone, about the presentations this week or next week? I know Jill does, but I think.
Can I bribe someone to not have me go first?
No.
Ah!
Who else is on Wednesday?
I am.
Okay, Alex, if you can bribe Alex if you can do it, but you'll have to do that privately.
Alex, I'll give you $5 through Venmo.
I'm going Wednesday.
She's going Wednesday.
Can I go second behind you?
Oh, you're going first.
Yeah,
Oh,
so the order I sent will be the order that will go in, unless somebody wants to bribe somebody.
I charge a rather large fee.
What?
She's offering-
$5.50.
I'm 20.
I am not paying you $20 for 5 more minutes.
All right. Well, listen, the good thing about going first is that you can make mistakes and people will just say, well, she went first. How did she know?
Okay, fine, we'll do that. All right, everyone, bear with me. I'm gonna do everything wrong.
There you go. Perfect. She's gonna blaze the trail so everyone can be terrible. All right. So we'll go again. First, what do we have? 4 people going Wednesday, whatever the number is. We'll see how that goes. I sent you a video on presenting, including online presenting. So take a look at that. Chapter 11 is on. It's in, I think, in the homepage of the Blackboard. You can fish the PowerPoint out of that if you'd like. And I will send out to everybody a student paper that's pretty good from fall of 2019. And you can look that over. I'm going to send it to you in 4 pieces because that's how he sent it to me. But it's got all the elements that you'll be looking for when you do your speeches, and you can use that as a guide. And there's also figure 10 point, what is it, 1010? Jillian, is that the
Yes.
figure that I've talked about all through the semester? So you
Yes.
can look at that. But I'm sure they're all going to be good. I'm sure they're all going to be good. Some will be great, and I'm looking forward to them. So I have not had the chance to tally up the scores yet, but I'll try to get that done by or before Wednesday. And from your elevator speeches, and I'll give you some feedback on that probably in an email. Good?
Professor, I got one quick question.
Yeah.
So for the presentations, you gave us all different days. Are those the dates that we have to turn them in by too, or do you need us to turn them all in by a certain date?
No, you can turn them in when you've got them done. What I do when we're doing it when we're doing it in class, I'll have you give me your rough draft, and that way I get to check it over and say, you want to work in this area, you want to work in that area. I don't necessarily go through them, line by line and say, change this word, change that word. You got a spelling error here. But I'll if you'd like me to look over your rough drafts, I can look them over at that time. But usually what I do is I'll sit there and I'll open up the rough draft during your presentation. I'll just see if you're matching your information up with what you're saying matches up with what you're writing, and also I can kind of see what's not there that you have to put in there. But I think that in one of the announcements or one of the things that I left on in Blackboard, I think there's a breakdown that says it should have that it should have a title page, it should have an executive summary, it should have content page, it should have, excuse me, a page with your sources, et cetera, et cetera. I sent that to you, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. So, yeah, so I don't need the rough draft until the very end, but I'm sorry, I don't need a rough draft at all. I don't need the final paper until the final date, whatever it was. But if you want to send it to me sooner, I'll have more time to read it. And if I do need you to, or if I do have a suggestion that you rewrite it, it'll give you more time. The sooner you get it to me, the more time you'll have to rewrite if you choose to rewrite. And as I said, sometimes students do and sometimes students don't. But if I give it to you to rewrite, it means that your grade is not as good as it could be. So just keep that in mind. But I'm sure you'll all do a great job. I know it's a big package, but it's not necessarily a meaty report. So keep that in mind when you're writing it. Just think to yourself, this isn't that bad. And if you want any help on your resume, I don't mind if you talk to other students. I don't mind if you go to the career. I'd actually like it if you went to the Career Center, because I think they can help you a lot. And I think it's a good place for you to be in terms of getting the knowledge. I'm sorry, any other questions? No, good. All right, we'll wrap it up. I'll see you on Wednesday for the online presentations, and have a good 2 days.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Professor, you're sending out the capstone example like now, right?
I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it right now.
All right, thanks.
Cool. Bye.